In the quiet town of Elmsbrook, nestled deep in the English countryside, the grand and decaying Hawthorne estate stood like a forgotten monument to a more distinguished past. Overgrown ivy clung to the stone walls like veins feeding a still-living corpse, and the wind that rustled through its empty halls carried whispers few dared to interpret. The townsfolk rarely ventured near it, speaking of it only in hushed tones, of strange happenings, of lights in the windows when none should be there, and of the curse that had allegedly taken root after the fall of the infamous Hawthorne Brothers. The Hawthorne family had been prominent landowners in the 18th and 19th centuries, wealthy from ironworks and timber. The three brothers, Edgar, Alaric, and Julian Hawthorne, were born to Lord Reginald Hawthorne and Lady Evangeline in the early 1800s. Though raised in wealth and privilege, theirs was not a happy household. Their mother, an eccentric and deeply religious woman, was said to have suffered visions and seizures. Their father, a cold and calculating man, obsessed over bloodlines and legacy. It was whispered that he kept detailed genealogical charts and refused to allow his children to marry outside a very narrow list of families. Purity begets greatness, he once wrote in a letter found decades later. Of the three brothers, Edgar was the eldest and most scholarly. A physician by training, he studied anatomy in the emerging field of neurology. His journals, later recovered in a locked drawer beneath the floorboards of his study, revealed his descent into an obsession with the human soul. He believed it was a physical force, one that could be seen at the moment of death if the right conditions were met. He built strange contraptions in the estate's east wing and often had patients brought in from nearby villages, those suffering from melancholia, epilepsy, or more obscure afflictions. None of them were seen leaving. Alaric, the middle brother, was a war veteran returning from the Crimean front, changed, physically intact but mentally fractured. He often spoke to people no one else could see and carved strange symbols into the stone walls of the estate. His behavior grew increasingly erratic over the years, and many believe it was his influence that led the brothers down a darker path. Some accounts suggest that Alaric became involved in occult practices, drawing on ancient texts brought back from the East. Several villagers swore they saw him conducting rituals in the woods behind the estate, naked beneath the full moon, muttering in languages that curdled the blood. Julian, the youngest and most charismatic, was beloved in Elmsbrook for a time. He held grand parties, seduced many, and was the only Hawthorne who ever seemed to show warmth. But even he had his secrets. It came to light, many years later, that Julian had fathered several illegitimate children and paid handsomely to keep them secret. More disturbingly, his charm masked a cruel temper. Servants spoke of strange punishments, prolonged silences, and once, a maid who vanished after accidentally breaking one of his imported porcelain statues. Her body was never found, and her name was quietly struck from the estate's records. In 1856, something changed. The estate shuttered itself. The gates were chained, and deliveries stopped. No one entered or exited for weeks. It was a bitter November morning when the townsfolk, alarmed by the silence, summoned the constable to investigate. What he found within chilled him so deeply that he resigned the next day and never spoke of it again. The details, pieced together from newspaper clippings, personal letters, and testimonies, paint a grim portrait. Edgar was found in his laboratory, seated at his desk, eyes wide open, a scalpel driven into his own chest. Around him were diagrams and sketches, macabre depictions of human anatomy overlaid with alchemical symbols. There was also a single line scrawled in blood on the wall behind him. The soul burns longer than the body. Alaric was discovered in the chapel at the rear of the estate. He had torn out the pews and painted the floor in ash and chalk, forming a large pentagram filled with runes. He lay at the center of it, dead from apparent self-inflicted lacerations to the throat and wrists. Yet no blood remained in his body. Local Dr. Thomas Welling wrote in his journal that the scene seemed ritually drained, though he was later dismissed as hysterical. Julian's body was never found. Only his clothes remained, folded neatly on his bed with a note atop them. I go where love cannot follow, where the bloodline ends and the truth begins. Some speculated he fled, others that he had become a victim of his own brother's madness. Yet, in the years that followed, several travelers passing near Elmsbrook reported seeing a tall, well-dressed man watching from the edge of the woods, always at twilight, and always vanishing before anyone could speak to him. After the incident, the estate was sealed. The Hawthorne fortune dissolved into legal battles, lost heirs, and ruin. Every attempt to sell or renovate the estate failed. Workmen would flee in terror, claiming tools moved on their own or that they heard whispering voices when alone. One man leapt from his second-floor balcony, screaming that something was inside his eyes. He died on impact. Over time, the story of the Hawthorne brothers turned into legend. Some claimed the brothers had discovered a way to trap the soul, to extend life beyond death, and that the estate itself had become a vessel of that unholy knowledge. Others said they had made a pact. Edgar's science, Alaric's mysticism, and Julian's charisma forming a trinity that opened a doorway to something not meant to be known. In 1903, a young academic named Lionel Hartley attempted to document the estate's history. He stayed for 6 nights, recording his thoughts in a leather-bound journal. His last entry reads, "I have heard them speak, not aloud but in my blood. I see them when I close my eyes. Edgar waits in the walls. Alaric whispers in the wind. Julian smiles in the mirror. I do not believe I will leave this place." Hartley was never seen again. His journal was found by a maid hired to clean the estate in 1911. It now resides in the archives of the Elmsbrook Historical Society, though access is restricted. In recent decades, interest in the Hawthorne estate has waned. Modern skeptics dismiss the tale as hysteria and Gothic fiction, yet the estate remains unsold, untouched, and curiously immune to the decay that should have consumed it. Windows remain intact. Paint does not peel. Clocks stopped at the exact hour of the brothers' deaths still tick on, though none are wound. Those who dare to step onto the grounds often describe an overwhelming sense of being watched, not with malevolence, but with a cold, analytical curiosity, as if something within the walls still studies the living, waiting, perhaps, for the right moment to continue its work. No one knows what truly happened that winter of 1856 or whether the Hawthorne brothers truly died. But one thing is certain, the house remembers and does not forget.